And hello, everyone. Good afternoon. As I look through the many photos up above, I see a lot of familiar faces and familiar names. So it's good to be with you again. And also good to be with some of you I'm meeting for the first time. I'd like to thank the organizers for the invitation to be with you for this first webinar to support formation and accompaniment around Lasallian ethos, identity, and charism, all as part of a strategic plan at your respective schools and pastoral centers. And I recall my presence with many of you back in 2017 and the conversations we shared, which were most enjoyable and educational for myself. So I thank you again then, as you remain committed to ensuring the vitality of the Lasallian mission and identity in the District of Ireland, Great Britain, and Malta. When we gather as one body around a common story, for us, the Lasallian story, we do so to recall what we are about, our purpose for being together. Centuries ago, the Venerable Bede expressed his belief that every day the church must give birth to the church. In a similar vein, every day we can say the Lasallian family must give birth to the Lasallian family. In other words, the understanding of that family's identity and mission is dynamic and always in evolution. New chapters are always being added to the story. Today, you are the protagonist, contributing to the vitality of the Lasallian heritage. You are the authors, adding new chapters to the story. In a manner of speaking, a purpose of these webinars is to frequent the future. According to Pope Francis, to frequent the future is to frequent the horizon of expectation and to frequent that which is to come in history. So, what are your expectations for coming together? What is the dream you have for the future of your district? The novelist Alice Walker said that if you look closely at the present you are constructing, it should look like the future you are dreaming. The Smithsonian Museum in Washington, D.C. recently opened a futures exhibit in its original 19th century red brick building. The displays in the exhibit are divided into futures past, futures that inspire, and futures that unite. And each provides a series of questions similar to questions and hopes and dreams we often express in our Lasallian gatherings. For example, futures past. They ask, as we do, how do we build on ideas of past generations? What ideas should we bring forward? What ideas should we leave behind or change? And then futures that inspire. How can your imagination help build a more sustainable future? How might we envision the needs of our students today and tomorrow? How might we anticipate the needs of the next generation of brothers and partners for the shared mission? And futures that unite. How can we create a future that is more equitable, peaceful, and inclusive? How can we make a more sustainable future by working together? These are questions to consider as you reflect on the ethos of a Lasallian ministry, an ethos that creates and lives a gospel-centered school culture. And we know that culture is always deeper than the simplistic how we do things around here. It is, before that, who is doing these things? With whom and for whom? Why are they doing them? What do they understand themselves to be doing? And when and where? In other words, the Lasallian story must not only be in our heads, but above all, in our hearts. And in our increasingly secularized society, and aware that many of your students rarely participate in the life of the local Christian faith communities, you as leaders are called to ensure that your students hear the good news, experience Christian commitment as an attractive and exciting life option, and have experiences that favor the development of Christ-like behaviors. In other words, we are challenged to create a school culture and contemporary Lasallian educational communities that influence values and behaviors by incorporating the maxims of the gospel, the rights of children as presented by the International Catholic Child Bureau and the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, incorporating all of these into the curriculum and the entire educational environment. The sharing of faith through which we influence values and behaviors is central to education and evangelization in Lasallian schools. A question leadership must ask and keep before itself is, what is the best way to announce the gospel of God's mercy and unconditional love to children and young people whose socio-cultural experiences include 24/7 connectivity, addictions, same-sex parents, multiple divorces, intolerant discourse, gay and transgender friends, and now even the pandemic we're all experiencing? Well, driven by the principle of Christian anthropology, inspired by God's image, beautifully reflected in each child and young person's face, and motivated by apostolic zeal, we must increase our collaboration and our cooperation. Increasing our collaboration and our cooperation is an objective of these webinars. Why? Well, in the words of one author, the largest forces on the planet, technology, globalization, and climate change, are all accelerating at once. As a result, many aspects of our societies, workplaces, and geopolitical areas are being reshaped and need to be reimagined. This is certainly an experience from the pandemic that we are learning. So on behalf of those entrusted to God, by God, to our care, we have an obligation to influence this reshaping and reimagining of our societies. We have to develop creative and effective strategies to ensure that the inherent dignity of all persons, and for us, especially poor children and young people, becomes a permanent societal value. Recent Institute documents written by brothers and partners in the last 7 years are helpful in this regard. They are examples of the Lasallian family giving birth to the Lasallian family. These documents, as you know, include the Declaration on the Lasallian Educational Mission, its challenges, its convictions, its hopes, Lasallian Formation for Mission, popularly known as the Pilgrim's Handbook, From Hope to Commitment, Understanding Lasallian Vocations, Identity Criteria for the Vitality of the Lasallian Educational Mission, and A Conversation for the Lasallian Family, Deepening Our Identity. These last two are offered as instruments to assess where we are today as a Lasallian family, with the invitation to deepen our reflection on who we are becoming. Like the Smithsonian's Futures Past, we are invited to weave new wineskins for what we are becoming, and to leave behind structures that are no longer useful, so as to seek ways to be attuned to the real needs of today and tomorrow. These documents articulate our Lasallian vocation and unlock potential pathways to our future. Formation is fundamental for the mission's future. So these documents are excellent resources for a quality formation experience. So in conclusion, my dear Lasallians, however we might describe our world today, postmodern, secularized, post-Christian, for the Catholic and Lasallian school to remain an evangelizing presence in the lives of our students, it requires greater intentionality on the part of those responsible for the school and pastoral centers. A critical factor in evangelization will be how the organizational culture of the school is constructed and animated. This is our responsibility today as Lasallian leaders. Furthermore, we are called to be women and men of hope for our sisters and brothers, our children and young people entrusted to our care. John Baptist de La Salle was a man of hope, and he continued to be our inspiration. In his final years, he remained imaginative, energized, life-giving, and generative. He did not dwell on loss, but rather he focused on life. Fortified with this hope and trusting in divine providence, his earthly journey launched a spirit-driven movement that is always being reborn. So, a persistent question, one that appears in many of our contemporary documents, regards evolving structures. I leave you with this structures question as phrased by the conversation document. What organizational structures and systems need to be in place to respond to the diversity of the Lasallian family today? May your webinars discover a pathway forward. Thank you again to the organizers of the webinars and to all of you, the participants. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brother Robert, for those inspirational words and some challenges that you've set before us. Just before we break up into small groups, we're going to do a quick exercise. In the chat function, I'm going to put up a link to a Mentimeter. If you could click on that link, and you'll see a question. We're asking you to capture one word or one phrase that you'll take away from Brother Robert's presentation and intervention with us today. So I'm going to put the Mentimeter link right in the chat box. You wouldn't mind clicking on that, and then we'll see a word cloud of our ideas and reactions to to Brother Robert's speech. And again, thank you, Brother, very much for your time. Brother Robert will stay with us for after the group time for some questions and answers. So, but first we'll get some initial reactions. So if you could just go ahead and add, feel free to add more than one word or more than one phrase, we can see what starts to develop. As the words are forming together. Hope, intentionality, inspiring, planning, entrusted by God, forward focused, dynamic, and evolution. Kindness, give birth, good news. Hope remains the center though. Future and intentionality. Kindness. Lasallian family. Thank you for that reflection. We'll keep the ideas coming as we move into our small groups, our breakout rooms now. But it's a wonderful way to begin the small group discussions, focused on hope, future, intentionality, collaboration, and all of the ideas that Brother Robert's intervention provoked. So I'm going to pass over to Joe Millay now, who will take us through the breakout room session.